All right. So welcome. We are gathered today to talk about the Community Action Code of Ethics, and not just the Code of Ethics as we've always known it, but to grab onto this idea about reimagining our Code of Ethics. So I want to welcome everyone and thank you all for being interested in the updates that are happening with the Code of Ethics and for joining us today. My name is Tawny Stottlemyre, and I work at your National Community Action Partnership. I'm the director of NCAP and also the Excellence Expansion Program, and have been in the network for a little over 30 years, working at the local level, the state association level, and now at the partnership. I always like to say that I feel like Johnny Cash when he sings that song, "I've been everywhere, man." That could be my career, but just be glad I don't sing it. Charles, I am going to ask you to introduce yourself because I'll bet no one on this call has ever heard of you before.
Probably not. I hope I don't owe anyone here money. At least I'm hoping for that. I'm Charles McCann. I've been in community action for over 50 years, and I also have experience at both the local, state, and national levels. The CCAP really means something to me. Community action really means something to me, and they kind of go hand in hand. And I'm delighted to have been asked to participate in this webinar on reimagined ethics.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Thanks. So as we get started, we have slides, of course, to take you through. And I wanted to show you this up front, that if you have questions or comments, I want you to feel free to put them in the chat window. And we'll try to capture those and address them at the end of the presentation if we can. And if not, Charles and I will try to get back with you on your questions. You can email me if you would like. Again, my email wins a prize for probably being one of the longest emails in the history of email. But it's just like my name. It's T for Tawny, Stottlemyre, which is spelled just as it sounds. And then you get to put at communityactionpartnership.com after that. So I wanted to let you know how to reach out in case you wanted to after we were finished here today. We always like to begin with a reflection on the promise of community action, what it is we're guaranteeing to America and to our communities that we are here for. And so I ask you to think about this today because this can get a little rote for us. We've memorized it. We say it each time we start a meeting. But as we are gathered today to talk about the Community Action Code of Ethics, as I say this and invite you to say it aloud if you'd like as well, think about how this promise is reflected or reflective of the code of ethics that community action should be committed to. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. Thank you. That just never flows quite as well in a webinar as it does in real life, but we keep trying, don't we? Also today, as we proceed, we definitely want to recognize that Charles and I are both coming to you from the Midwest. And even before the call today, we were talking about the Native and Indigenous people that live on the land that we both occupy, recognizing that we share territory from the Kickapoo Indians, even though we're in two different states, right?
Yeah.
And so we invite you to reflect upon the traditional lands and the Native and Indigenous people from where you're sitting, and to pay our respect to those elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Now, Charles, as we start our conversation here, we titled this Reimagining the Code of Ethics. Can you say just a moment, like when you think about reimagined, what do you think that means?
To me, reimagine, first I think of what it does not mean. It does not mean you're going to change it all or replace. We're not replacing the code of ethics. We're reimagining the code of ethics. If you think that the code of ethics that we've had just reimagined are 30 years or more old, if you go to your closet, you're probably not wearing clothes that are 30 years old. Your vocabulary is probably not what you were using 30 years ago. Things change, and the need comes from time to time to update, to reflect current ideas of the time, to say things in the current vernacular, and in that way, I think it's reimagined. I like reimagined better than reinvented. I guess both work, but it does not mean replace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I want to add that when I think about the term imagination, it makes me think about the future. I think about the way we imagine what could happen, and then that is how we come into inventions, right? That is how we progress, is by imagining something first. And so thinking about what you said, that things have changed, times have changed, it just makes sense that we would need to look at our structures like the code of ethics and think about the future and imagine how we can make that work for the future. So let's start today by talking about what a code of ethics is, right? Just set that out there so we're all on the same starting ground. A code of ethics is a set of morals, values, and aspirations by which a group makes decisions about what is right or wrong. Morals, values, and aspirations that help a group make decisions about what is right or wrong. And I think that could say that helps a person or an individual make decisions about what is right or wrong too. So you might be asking yourself, well, if a code of ethics tells us how we need to conduct ourselves in doing what is right or wrong, how's that different from a code of conduct? So let's talk about that. A code of conduct, it clearly states what actions are appropriate and what are not, whereas a code of ethics is giving us guidance about values and choices. So let me rephrase that this way. A code of ethics, you can see, would be easily applicable to something like a nationwide network, right? Helping us think about values and choices through a set of guidance. Whereas a code of conduct might be more important for your staff meetings or for your personnel policies that describe how you're supposed to dress for business attire or business casual. Maybe a code of conduct could be that we're expected to wear masks in a meeting. A code of conduct is more specific about actions and the day-to-day work, whereas a code of ethics is giving us overall guidance about our choices. Charles, I've been in this network for over 30 years, and I know you have been around for a minute as well. I don't remember a time when there wasn't a community action code of conduct. I've just known this code that we've had forever, but I know it had to start somewhere. So can you give us a little history lesson on how that came to be?
little history lesson on how, at least how the code of ethics came to be committed to writing.
Hmm.
And if Tony mentioned earlier, she'd been in community action about 30 years. And it was just around 30 years ago, a little bit more, that the something called the Certification Advisory Group was meeting to craft the CCAP program. And our consultant, Dr. Marty Burns, her company was Integrated Options, toward the very end said, it's customary in a professional certification program for candidates to sign some sort of statement of ethics of what you've got. Do you have anything like that? And we said, well, sure we do. And she said, is it written down? And we said, well, no. And she said, why not? And we answered, well, everybody already knows what they are. She said, no, no, no. You better get those written down. So a committee was appointed. I was chair of the committee. Members of the committee were Rod Heineman, who then was the CSBG director in Iowa. Rod has since moved to Arizona, the CSBG office there years ago, got tired of shoveling snow, and is now retired. Rod and I still keep in touch, actually. The other person on the committee was Don Menicha. Don was the director of Hawkeye Community Action in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And Don is deceased. But we were the committee. And since the other two were already in Iowa, and I was still then in Northwest Missouri, we decided that we would meet in Des Moines at the Iowa State Capitol building. So on a very, very cold January day in the early 90s, I remember driving to Des Moines and trying to find a place to park by the Iowa State Capitol. And because it's cold, you want to park up close. Well, the up close spaces, they're all reserved for the legislators. So I thought, well, maybe a little bit farther out. No, can't do that either. They're reserved for the people that work there. So you end up way away and walking up that little hill to the Capitol to have the meeting to craft these code of ethics, to commit them to writing. We met in the basement of the Iowa State Capitol, and they had kind of a snack bar there. And remember, we sat at one of those round ice cream parlor tables, and we were sitting on those ice cream parlor chairs, the ones with the wire backs on them, and talking about these ethics. The three of us and Catherine Hamilton from Rod's staff, who was our clerk, made the fourth. The first thing we did is we reviewed ethics from other organizations to get a sort of a sense of, what they were and how they were stated and content and tone, I guess. And we borrowed heavily certain generic ethics, such as respect confidential information, no undue personal gain, generic, and then others we crafted specifically for community action. The first one, the chief function of the community action movement at all times to serve the best interests of the poor. And then Rod added at the end, thereby serving the best interests of all people. So we've noticed that some of the ethics we reviewed had preambles, and we decided we would like a preamble. And we selected for a preamble directly from the Economic Opportunity Act, that we're dedicating ourselves to eliminating poverty in the midst of plenty in this nation by opening to everyone various opportunities. And we felt if we did that, anyone who signed the ethics would be kind of connected with the same words that had been connecting us from the very beginning of community action in 1964. At the end of the day, we had 12 ethics, and we sent them in. I sent them in on behalf of the committee to the organization now known as the Partnership for review and presentation at our next certification advisory group meeting. Almost immediately, now back then, early 90s, immediate did not mean an email. Immediate did not mean a text. Immediate meant a fax. We all got a fax. And it returned our work with heavily marked corrections. You couldn't say this, you couldn't do that, and codes of ethics didn't have preambles. I remember almost immediately after that, I got a call from Don who said, "Did you just get a fax?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "What'd you think of it?" I said, "I didn't like it." And he said, "Neither did I." So we contacted Rod, and we drafted and polished a response and sent it back. When the advisory group met, guess what? All the problems went away. We could say this, we could say that. Preamble was fine. The only thing added was suggested by the wonderful Winston Ross, who decided at the end of the preamble, he suggested we add the words, "and with respect for cultural diversity." And it passed just like that. Now, I have actually tried unsuccessfully to find out whether or not that fax that we received was a test to see whether or not we would quickly abandon our ethics or if we would stand our ground and fight for them. Well, they've been in place here for 30 years, now being reimagined, which I support, by the way. As chair of the initial committee, I support the reimagining. Avril Weissman once asked me, how long has community action had a code of ethics? And my answer was, since 1964, and they were committed to writing in the early 90s. So that's your history lesson, Tawny.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I'm going to ask you to just take us forward and let's do a quick memory lane trip about the current code of ethics.
Let's look at the code of ethics, whether current, soon to be retro code of ethics, but here they are. And we try to use strong verbs. If it's your behavior, strong verbs. What are you going to do? Action words. What actions are you going to take to make these ethics real? To recognize that the chief function of the community action movement at all times is to serve the best interests of the poor, thereby serving the best interests of all people. I didn't do the preamble. Well, we did the preamble. I kind of did it earlier with the history lesson. That's right from the Economic Opportunity Act. Accept as a personal duty the responsibility to keep up to date on emerging issues. Conduct ourselves with professional competence, fairness, impartiality, efficiency, and effectiveness. Respect the structure and responsibility of the board of directors. Provide them with facts and advice as a basis for their making policy decisions, and uphold and implement the policies adopted by the board of directors. Keep the community informed by issues affecting the poor. Facilitate communication by the poor with locally elected public officials and the private sector. conduct our organizational and operational duties with positive leadership, exemplified by open communication, creativity, dedication, and compassion. This next ethic was always now these ethics are not numbered. They're of equal weight. They're not numbered. But the next ethic is my favorite ethic. It's not even one I think is most important. It's my favorite ethic. Exercise whatever discretionary authority we have under the law to promote the interests of the poor. It's my favorite ethic because it empowers you, it entitles you, it demands that you meddle. That's the one I call the meddling ethic. Many wonderful things have happened because some folks were courageous and would meddle in people's business. I got stories about that sometime when there is time. Well, that's my my favorite ethic. Lead the community action movement with respect, concern, courtesy, and responsiveness, recognizing the service to the poor is beyond service to oneself. Demonstrate the highest standards of personal integrity, truthfulness, honesty, and fortitude. Someday we might have a discussion on why fortitude. And fortitude in all our community action activities in order to inspire confidence and trust in the community action movement. And that's the one, that's the piece I think is, personal opinion, most important. Inspiring confidence and trust in the community action movement. Serve in such a way we do not realize undue personal gain from the performance of our official duties. Avoid any interest or activity that is in conflict with the conduct of official duties. Respect and protect privileged information to which we have access in the course of official duties. And finally, strive for professional excellence and encourage the professional development of our associates, including those seeking to become certified community action professionals.
Thank you, Charles.
A little bit of a rundown on what we've had since the early 90s up until very, very recently.
Yeah, thank you. So as you noted earlier, when we were talking about reimagining, a lot about our world has changed in those 30 years. I mean, if you think about it, a lot about our world has changed in just the past 3 or 4 years, right? So community action systems and protocols and even our code of ethics, they all have to remain pertinent. So recognizing that, a joint committee was formed 2 years ago, I think now, to engage members of the CCAP Commission, the Certified Community Action Professional Program Commission, and the National Community Action Partnership Board of Directors. And that joint commission was charged with reimagining the code of ethics. So I want to give you a little bit of background on what that commission looked at and some of the priorities that they set forth. When they looked at the code of ethics, they said, we really want to start with people first terms. Instead of saying the poor, we now want to say people living with low incomes, right? They said we want to be income inclusive because in reality, community action isn't just dealing with those in poverty. We are also dealing with struggling populations who live anywhere from 100% to 200% of the federal poverty line. So let's be a little more income inclusive. We want to retain history. We don't want to just throw everything out. So you see that, and you will see that when we look at the reimagined code of ethics. Another priority the committee had was, let's be sure we talk about communities, not just individuals, but that we are ethically prioritizing and focusing on communities and families. And we definitely want to see emphasis in community actions commitment to revitalization, empowering people, and revitalizing communities. So those were some of the priorities that the joint committee set out. And we didn't go from just there to a new code of ethics, not even close. We had to go through several listening sessions and input sessions with the CCAP Commission, with the NCAP Board of Directors, and also with others that participated through surveys and focus groups. We had a focus group at the annual convention where people gave input as well. So we got good input from the people who said, we want you to add an introduction, because a code of ethics makes sense if you know what a code of ethics is and you know what community action is, but it might not make sense to people who don't know us. So let's explain that. The people said, let's include our core values. The National Community Action Partnership Board has voted on a set of core values, and ethics and values are very closely related. So let's make sure those are mentioned in there as well, and make the language as inclusive as possible. So in other words, instead of saying their struggle or their rights and priorities, we say our struggles, our rights and priorities, that we are all inclusive in our code of ethics. So you'll see those things present in the code that we're about to show you. Let's start with that introduction. So the reimagined, the refreshed Community Action Code of Ethics starts with this introduction that America's Community Action Network is comprised of local direct service organizations and the state, regional, and national organizations that support and nurture the work of community action agencies. So there we describe the network. We talk about it having local base and then state, regional, and national supportive systems. Collectively, the network's chief mission is to address the causes and conditions of poverty and support upward social and economic mobility for people and families living with low incomes. So we talk about the structure of the network, and then we talk about the mission of the network. And you see some of that more inclusive language beginning to show through. The Community Action Code of Ethics is a set of morals, values, and aspirations by which those leading and working in the nationwide network make decisions about what is right or wrong. Conducting ourselves in accordance with these ethical principles is an expectation Community Action Network members have of ourselves and our organizations. So this just provides a really nice introduction to who we are, why we exist, what our code of ethics is about, and that we have an expectation that people in our network will be upholding the code of ethics. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there was that feedback that said, let's put our values in there. So the introduction includes the values on which the code of ethics is built, include committing to mission advancement, defending and promoting equity, behaving respectfully, caring for the entire community, embodying the spirit of hope, creating opportunities, and deploying innovation. Those coming directly from your National Community Action Partnership Board. And then we have the preamble. So introduction, values, preamble. And the preamble reads as something I think you'll be very familiar with. We as community action professionals dedicate ourselves to eliminating poverty in this nation by opening to everyone the opportunity for education and training, the opportunity for work, and the opportunity to live in decency and dignity, and with respect for cultural diversity, commit ourselves to the following ethics. So I'm going to stop there and just pause to reflect that we now have the introduction, we've got the values, the preamble at this point has not changed. So what we will see next are the refreshed and reimagined ethics themselves. And we've gone from 12 to 6. And Charles, I'm going to ask you to take us through the first 3, if you would. What is ethic number 1?
Remain focused on the mission. And the on the right-hand side, you'll note that this is a refreshed version of the first ethics on the retro ethics. Instead of recognizing the chief function of community action movement at all times to serve the best interests of the poor, thereby serving the best interests of all people, it becomes recognize the chief function of the community action movement at all times is to serve the best interests of people with lower incomes, which in turn serves the best interests of the entire community. So you sort of see how we're putting that criteria, the people first, involving the community, how that ties together under that first, what I call an umbrella ethic, to remain focused on the mission. In addition, seek to empower people and revitalize communities. That should sound somewhat familiar. That's directly from the CSBG Act as what we're going to do. We are to empower people and revitalize communities. And then engage in activities that move us closer to mission achievement and produce positive outcomes. So under the first ethic, there are 3 charges, each with an active, strong verb.
Charles, what about that last sentence there? Engage in activities that move us closer to mission achievement. I mean, this ethic is titled Remain Focused on Mission. Can you say a little bit about why that's there?
I think that's there because one of the purposes, remaining focused on mission, you begin to wonder, first identifying what the mission is. Most of you, well, probably all of you, have a mission statement in your bylaws. Do you remain focused on the mission? I think this is intended to keep us from wandering into unrelated areas and core incompetencies. Mm-hmm. I think the practice of that last sentence in this first ethic can snap us back to reality.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put that. We hadn't talked about it that way before, but I think you're right. Mission drift is something that can really threaten the community action network. And
mission drift, that's a good term.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So that whole concept of remaining focused on mission and then making sure that we're engaging activities that move us closer to mission helps us stay on track. Okay, I sidetracked you. Let's go to
You're fine.
Number 2.
Outspoken advocates and educators. Actively, see, we're just these 6 are kind of umbrellas, and within those umbrellas are restatements of these retro ethics. Actively inform the community decision makers about issues affecting those with lower incomes. Actively inform the community. We've always said that one of our values in our body of knowledge is to make known the plight of the poor. Remember Michael Harrington, the poor are invisible, not simply neglected, but not even seen. That particular sentence deals with, addresses that. Courageously confront. Sometimes it's not easy to courageously confront and dismantle the myths about social and economic inequality. Many times the pushback on that is very, very strong, very, very public, and can be very, very personal. Courageously confront and dismantle myths about social and economic inequality. That somebody says that people experiencing low incomes are experiencing that because it just won't work, is somebody standing up and confronting and dismantling that myth about social and economic inequality. The Census Bureau will tell you that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. There you go about the economic inequality. Another strong verb, participate in promoting policies that support social and economic mobility. Participate in promoting policies that support social and economic mobility, which reinforce the values of an equitable society. So that is to send the signal that we are not, the community action, we are not bystanders. Community action is the word action. We are participants. We are not bystanders.
Okay. And number 3.
That's that was the ethic that before I said I thought was the most important, and it actually made its own umbrella. Inspire confidence and trust in the community action movement. Lead and serve, servant leadership. Professional competence, be up to date, practice the highest standards of personal integrity, confidentiality, honesty, and fortitude in all we say and do. And I hope that practitioners really give that some good thought about, well, what's going on that you're actively exhibiting personal integrity, confidentiality, honesty, and fortitude. I think it demands, it just doesn't happen accidentally. You can't get away with saying, well, I'm just naturally those things. It's by the nature of who I am. I think that requires some thought and what's actually being done to do that. And then courageously earlier, bravely now. Not easy. Look at that. Courageously, fortitude, bravely confront any behavior or practice that has the capacity to erode public trust and community action. Perhaps that's external, perhaps that's internal. Or disregard the struggle of people living with low incomes.
Which can also be internal or external, right?
Which can also be internal or external.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what I see there is taken almost verbatim from the code of ethics that we have had in place.
The retro code.
The retro code. And what we're adding here is really that piece about making sure that we're doing something when there's something going on that could erode public trust in our network or contribute to that negative framework about poverty or people living with low income. All right. Thanks, Charles. I am going to take us to ethic number 4, which is practice service above self. Acknowledge service to the mission, vision, and collective values of community action is beyond service to oneself. Avoid real and perceived conflicts of interest and ensure undue personal gain is not realized from the performance of professional duties. So ethic number 4 is to practice service above self. And right away, again, you recognize the language raised from the original code of ethics, the retro code. This statement combines some of those original ethics statements into one title. of practicing service above self. So as in that last ethic, we were kind of looking at us standing up and being brave and speaking out when things were happening external to us as an individual. And this ethic really kind of reflects internally to us as practicing service above self. That's ethic number 4. And ethic number 5, one of my favorites here, is be leaders, support leaders, and create leaders. This ethic says actively engage people with low incomes in realizing and developing leadership skills. Respect and support other leaders, particularly the Community Action Board of Directors, by providing facts and advice as a basis for policy decisions, and by upholding and dutifully implementing policies adopted by the board. Practice open-mindedness, effective communication, inclusiveness, and self-care. Encourage and facilitate the professional and personal development of associates. So again, there are a few of the original 12 ethics condensed into a leadership umbrella. We bring in the responsibility that we have as community action to support maximum feasible participation and ensure our customers have opportunities to develop their own personal and community leadership profiles. And we recognize our respect of and need to support the Community Action Board of Directors in their leadership roles. And then we address personal leadership, which includes self-care and supporting the professional development of our colleagues and our peers. So I really like this ethic: be leaders, support leaders, create leaders. That's ethic number 5. Ethic number 6 rounds us out with strive for performance excellence. And it says habitually opt for moving beyond mere compliance. Exercise our influence to inspire excellence through implementation of best practices, maximizing efficiencies, practicing innovation, providing outstanding trauma-informed customer service, and honestly and robustly evaluating the outcomes of our work. Strive for performance excellence. So this guidance refreshes our original ethic about excellence and professional development by noting that excellence really needs to be our habit, not our exception. And it captures important values like being innovative and producing outcomes and being trauma-informed. So there we had your introduction, your preamble, and 6 ethical guides with statements and guidance for each one. Let's see how it shakes out all together. We've got our introduction. We have the core values listed there, upon which our ethics are built. We've got our preamble. And then we have our 6 ethics. Remain focused on mission, be outspoken advocates and educators, inspire confidence and trust in the community action movement, practice service above self, be leaders, support leaders, and create leaders, and strive for performance excellence. And because I know that it's really important for several of us in the network to be able to remember these things, and there may be CCAP candidates out there thinking, oh my gosh, how do I reframe all of this in my brain? We've even got a mnemonic device for you. If you take a look at some of the letters and the words in there, you could try to remember this by saying that you were focused on leadership and excellence. Now, bear with me there, because you see how if we remain focused on mission, be outspoken advocates and educators, inspire confidence and trust in the community action movement, practice service above self, be leaders, support leaders, create leaders, and strive for performance excellence. You see
Tony, excuse me, Tony. That might be all well and good, but surely we can do better than that. Surely there must be something better than that.
All right. Okay, so you're right. It doesn't exactly spell out focus on leadership and excellence. What about this? What
Okay.
if we went with the marvelous Miss Maisel, right? Okay. See, this one spells it out. Remain focused on mission, be outspoken advocates, inspire, practice service above self, be leaders, strive for performance excellence. That one's
Tawny,
exact.
Tawny, excuse me again, Tawny. I see what you're trying to do there, but surely we can do better than that. Surely we can do better than that. You know, I've been trying to think about this some myself, and we just had opening day, baseball season. So it's all about baseball and public TV, public radio, RBI, PBS, RBI, Remain, Be, Inspire, and PBS, Practice, Be, and Strive. RBI,
All
PBS.
right.
It's all about baseball and public radio. Or
You're
TV,
right.
you got there.
You're right. I can do better, but
Okay.
I mean, I think it's an individual choice, Charles. People could do it however they wanted to.
That's right. Whatever works. Whatever works.
That's right. But I want you to know about something. This is Jane Addams, and Jane lived from 1860 to 1935, from the Civil War to the Great Depression, right? And the things that she did really foreshadowed the New Deal and the Great Society. Have you heard of Jane Addams before, Charles?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good, good.
I'm sure of Jane Addams. Wasn't she involved with Hull House in Chicago when that?
I think she was. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was a social
They just
justice.
closed Hull House last year. Very, very sad.
Yeah,
Being open for over 100 years.
yeah. Well, she was really into social justice.
Yes, she
and
was.
urging Americans to be more equal and cooperative and peaceful and kind. She was the first woman president of the National Conference of Social Work. And she was a pacifist. She served as the president of the International Congress to Women in 1915, and she founded the Women's Peace Party. And she was a Nobel Prize winner in 1913. And the reason I want you to know all of this is you can see the threads that are tied into what community action is today, but also because she had this amazing and marvelous thing to say about ethics. And that was that action, indeed, is the sole medium of expression for ethics. So it's one thing for us to sit here and push out a refreshed and reimagined code of ethics for the Community Action Network, but they are nothing. They are nothing if we don't take action on them, right? Does that make sense, Charles?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
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 Otherwise, they're pretty hollow.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's how we put these to work in our organizations. It's how we put them to work as individuals and what we decide to do with them.
Yeah.
Which
Another way to say it, perhaps, Tawny, is that it's action. It's not merely posting a copy of these on your wall.
exactly. Although we think that would be a good idea too.
Yes, yes, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea too, but not absent action.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen some comments in the chat. We have talked about making posters available for agencies with the Code of Ethics, the refreshed code on them. So if that's something you're interested in, please drop me a note, let me know, or put it here in the chat. I'm seeing lots of yeses coming in. Thank you for that. So thank you to Jane for giving us that nice thought about the Code of Ethics needing action to actually have any life in it. So I just want to revisit those 6 pillars for you again. Remain focused on mission, be outspoken advocates and educators, inspire confidence and trust in the community action movement, practice service above self, be leaders, support leaders, and create leaders, and strive for performance excellence. Which
RBI, PBS.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to say you could remember as focus on leadership and excellence or the marvelous Miss Maisel, but whatever. So I want to see, are there questions that I have missed here in the chat? We are recording this, so we will make it available and that'll be sent out to all of you. And the code is currently, this refreshed code has been voted on by the Partnership Board of Directors. So it is in force as of today. Oh, as of mid-February, actually. And this is posted on the partnership website. So if you want a copy of the Code of Ethics themselves, you can go out to the partnership website, communityactionpartnership.com, and you look under the About Us section, and that's where you'll find the code. We do plan to present material similar to this in August at the partnership's annual convention. So if you think you know of someone that you'd like to encourage to take a closer look at this and listen to this presentation with us, you can share the recording with them, which we'll send you by email, or always certainly join us for the National Convention in August. Charles, are you seeing any questions there that I directly missed?
I didn't see, Amy Carter had a question, but I couldn't see the bottom part of it. It said that she was stepped out at the beginning. And Amy, what is your question?
I was just asking if current CCAP candidates who are testing in June, are they learning this current one? Okay, Leah answered.
Yes.
I just want to make sure all the folks that we have testing know what they need to understand.
That's right. And I think that the current study guide indicates that the ethics that will be in use at the time of the test are the ethics posted now on the partnership's website. So,
yes.
So that's where to get them. But it's not the these reimagined ethics. The board passed them. I mean, the board it's been through the partnership board, right, Tony?
It has, yes.
Yeah. So these are the current ethics, and CCAP candidates will be tested on the current ethics, not the retro ethics. So the suggestion would be that they use the up-to-date vocabulary reflected in the reimagined, refreshed ethics.
Good question, Amy. Thank you. Anyone else have questions that you want to share with us? Okay. Well, I want to share with you that we do have some other opportunities coming up for the network just through the next, whoa, my mouse went crazy. There it goes. Over the next couple of weeks, and you'll find these again on the partnership's website. We have a new state association executive director training coming up April 12th. And then reimagining impact with the whole family approach webinar on April 19th. You'll notice that you're seeing and hearing a lot of reimagining language this year. That's our kind of convention and conference theme for the year. Pathways to Excellence Implementer Training on April 28th. That is an excellent way to help your own agency really start to understand what's required in meeting or exceeding the standards of excellence. Really good internal training. And then If you are taking the CCAP exam this year, there will be an exam orientation and instructions on May 3rd for current candidates. And I want to be clear, that's not a session for people interested in the CCAP program. It is for those who are already enrolled and set up to take the exam this year. All right, well, Charles, you, other than being cantankerous about the mnemonic
curmudgeon.
device,
A
a
curmudgeon,
curmudgeon, a bow-tied curmudgeon.
a bow-tied
seriously.
curmudgeon at that.
Thank you so much. And I also just want to stop and say thank you for the work that you did a little over 30 years ago on our original code of ethics and setting this course for us.
And very
this is-
pleased for the refresh. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, you guys, we really appreciate you joining us. Go spread the good news, and we will get some emails out to you with links and recording and slides and opportunities for posters in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.